So
This is my lumberjack outfit.
I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.
We just call that fashion in Oregon.
Yeah, this is considered to be dressing up in Oregon.
Yeah, I saw you got some runs in last week, Corey. Like,
Oh yeah,
bike
El
trail's
Nino.
still not good, or like?
Oh no, bike trails are ready. El Nino has given us a gift of February mountain biking.
That's nice.
Anywhere on the West Coast.
We I don't know. It's just like this piddly. It's still like this, like a little bit of snow, and it's muddy, and it's kind of. But I did get a Wahoo kicker, and for the office, so I've been doing that, and I don't know. I'm
better than nothing.
It is much better than nothing, actually. So,
yeah.
But yeah,
does that? Yeah, our power was out here for a little bit, and I was like looking into, should I just get a bike to like power my house? Is that a thing? Turns out you can, but they're really expensive, and also it like obviously I can't generate like kilowatts of power.
Yeah,
that sounds like something the power company would give you like money back on, right? Like, could you generate enough power to push it back into the grid?
No, the amount you could generate would be like charge your phone levels, not like anything beyond that. Like it's like, I mean, think about it. Like I can put out maybe 200 to 300 watts for like a sustained period. That's like nothing in the grand scheme of power.
What if you bought a cat wheel? That also generates power.
I mean, we put Corey in the cat wheel. Like,
it's got to be big enough for Corey and a cat, maybe.
Okay,
or it
I
has,
like this.
Adjustable wheels, like you can extend it to like.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Have you considered involving child labor of some kind, like opening a daycare?
A crawl wheel. I'm going to need one of those right now.
Like seesaw, that can generate some power, right?
Scale out, go wide.
True, go wide. That's how it is now. I'll get an Ansible script going for setting that up.
All right, are we ready to kick this off, y'all?
Yeah.
Always.
Do it.
Let's do it.
We're always ready.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Black Hills Information Security, talking about news. My name is John Strand, and I am back from training week after week, back to back, pay what you can classes. I think we trained over 2,000 people, or right around 2,000 people. It was crazy. Super excited to be back, and we've got, of course, a great show with news stories involving U.S. insurance companies getting hacked, the Verizon data breach, not the report. The Verizon data breach.
Are they going to do a report on the report?
Are they going to do a report on that? IT suppliers being compromised, bootloaders, shims, and Linux systems, hack exploits for job boards, stealing millions of resumes and personal data. And I think we're going to get around to still talking about Ivanti devices being hit by a wave of exploits and security holes. It's just like they're coming on strong as far as one of the most hated companies in computer security right now whenever it comes to breaches. So hats off to them. And also something a little bit different. If you're the audience and you're chatting, if there's a news story you would like us just to blindly click on in the form of a link. And
if you'd like to fish us.
BHIS, we click links.
Do our pre-production team's job for us. If there's something that's just burning in your soul and you're like, they really need to talk about this. Also, this particular edition of Talking About News is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security and Antisyphon Security Training. We do stuff. Like, I don't know.
John,
I guess. I don't know. I suck at this. So go ahead, Corey.
I have a question. When are we going to get our own Super Bowl ad? They're only $7 million for 60 seconds.
Now, in the content community team, or was it in the business meeting, I had an idea for this. And the idea was like a 30-second spot, right? A very sad Sarah McLachlan song. What's your favorite? What's the saddest?
In the Arms of the Angel.
In the Arms of the Angel, right? And it's nothing but the content and community team's picture, like fading in and fading out, and fading in and fading out, and then at the end it says Black Hills Information Security. Please do business with us so we can hire our content community team back.
That's heartbreaking.
Wait, they get paid $3 million?
I don't think it's quite that much. I think sometimes they spend that much. They're like, is it okay if we do a comic book? It's like,
Do you want me to submit an approval? It just says I need $7 million for a quick Super Bowl ad.
That sounds like a ransomware note at that point. But no, we're a long ways from CrowdStrike levels of stupidity whenever it comes to spending. Let's talk about that a little bit. how do we feel? Does that feel like we used to be the cool kids and now we're not cool because now we're being advertised in the Super Bowl along with like toilet paper and
John, we're not CrowdStrike.
We're not CrowdStrike, but I mean the industry.
I was going to say, as the infosec industry, well, it's certainly not like I remember the days when no one had heard of information security, and we're the people who didn't get invited to meetings. So I'd say it's definitely come a long way in the last, oh God,
yeah, it's gotten a lot worse, I'd say.
Yeah. I feel like an infosec hipster. Like I hear about that.
Curmudgeon.
And it's
you
just
need more
like
hair.
Oh yeah, facial hair in particular. I'd be like, I was in computer security before it was in the Super Bowl. No, I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I feel like it's a play right out of their book. Dude, if you got a Formula One car, like, what's next? Like, Super Bowl. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know. The other thing is, the bigger thing for me is if you're going to do layoffs, maybe you shouldn't do a Super Bowl ad,
Did they do layoffs? Did they announce that? No way.
I think they had some layoffs a little while back.
Oh, I've got to find that. Hold on. I got to see that.
Yeah.
So there was a question, why are they marketing to the common man? I don't think they are, right? I mean, the Super Bowl is quite expensive to go to.
Did you see all those celebrities at the Super Bowl?
I agree.
Jack Dorsey was there, right?
Yeah.
Right next to Jay-Z.
I loved it.
Beyonce.
They're like, it's Beyonce and Jay-Z. Don't even talk about him. Like, he's just right there.
And so I guess the reason I say it's not the common man is, I had it on for most of the day, and I noticed there was like a Red Hat Ansible commercial coming through. Like Red Hat. Yeah, like, that's not for the common man, Red Hat and Ansible. So I don't know. It's definitely.
I mean, that might be localized. That might be like only for you.
It could be.
Yeah. So, some of it gets localized. Some of it is they understand how many execs are watching.
They do.
Yeah,
they do.
But they should know. The only way to advertise to execs is to only have them listen to their neighbors. That's the only people execs listen to. They'll be mowing the lawn. Oh, have you heard of CrowdStrike? And then next day, hey, we need to be buying CrowdStrike. That's exactly how it goes.
The neighbor gets a new Porsche. He's like, oh, wow, that's weird.
I thought it was like Barracuda in the airports. Do you remember the old Barracuda?
Oh, my God. They had advertising everywhere.
And then Cylance, I went through the Phoenix airport maybe one time? It was the airport in Arizona, I think. And Cylance was everywhere in that airport. That was 2018.
I loved the Cylance ads though. It's like silence as attackers. I'm like, oh, that's crafty. That's like that is so bad from a marketing perspective. Like somebody's like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Cylance and silence kind of rhyme, and we should play on that. And then they did it. It's like the Farmers commercial. There's a comedian, I can't remember. He's like, coming up with like tunes. Like the guy drinks the entire night, and they're like, okay, you need to come up with a song right now for Farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. And they're like, brilliant. Let's go with that. That was really bad. Yeah, and then the other thing with the Cylance posters, they had all of their executives. Like they had a whole bunch of guys in suits, and they're like, McClure, the CEO of Cylance, and he believes in silence. Well, of course he does. He's the effing CEO.
Well, he quit like a year later, I'm pretty sure.
He did totally quit. He didn't believe that much. After the sweet BlackBerry money rolled in.
So
I guess
gotta
we should talk about the news.
Blackvest.
Sorry.
Hold on. Blackvest just said Cylance because nothing BlackBerry owned ever will.
How's your roller skating game?
Me?
So if you saw the halftime show, it was Usher.
Skating.
He was amazing, but they had it on roller skates, like the old 4-wheeled roller skates.
That was pretty legit, and they were pretty good. I was like, all right, I'll give you this. Like
I'm
Usher and roller skates, that's
babies.
Next level Usher dancing.
It was pretty good.
Like Solar Babies and Usher. Like I don't know if that's a too weird of an '80s movie reference, but.
Yeah, it is. All right, let's do the news.
Let's do it. All right, now that we're done, who wants to pick the first article? Audience,
we already said Ivanti. Let's just
let's do that one. Go to it.
So basically, for those that don't know, Ivanti Connect Secure, our favorite VPN, now has another vulnerability that's being chained with the previous ones. Ivanti recently, I think, took a lot of press because we talked about it last week, but SZA said, unplug your Ivanti devices. They did not say patch them. They just said, either patch them or turn them off.
Holy shit. I actually agree with Sissa on something. Wow.
Well, we talked about it last week, and we didn't have any of like the people who actually knew what they were talking about, which I guess is like somewhat
That's
normal,
our whole shtick.
Yeah, but I guess John and Kelly, one of the things that was brought up is like, does Sissa even have the ability to say that? Like, we kind of like went down a rabbit hole. Apparently they do have executive authority to do that somehow. But yeah, they're just like, unplug it. Basically, exploit it in the wild, the standard thing. I think it's all pretty standard. We talk about this all the time, but
it's the Eye of Sauron.
When one vulnerability happens in a product, it's so common to see a chain of vulnerabilities come after that. Like it happened with the print spooler in Windows. And now here we are, it's happening with Ivanti. So that's why Sissa is like, cut it.
And that's really, really typical, right? Like we talked about this in Java. We talk about this in Flash. We talk about this in Fortinet. Talk about this with almost any of these different vendors. And as soon as you start seeing these class of vulnerabilities come out, it's like a dinner bell for every hacker that's out there, because they know that there's a strong possibility that those poor coding practices are going to persist in not just that thing. And that's really consistent in the industry. Now, the question I want to ask, you maybe talked about this last week, are we just going to go with Ivanti sucks? Or is it just they're the ones that are getting analyzed right now?
The ones getting
I think a little of both.
I don't think they suck.
We've seen this happen over and over again. Like once one person once they get a vulnerability, the Eye of Sauron turns on them, just goes, all right, show us all your weaknesses, and bam, they get popped. It's tale as end as time, as we've seen in cybersecurity. Yeah. I'm surprised there isn't a framework about it. It's once you get popped about, like, there's this level of vulnerability that you have to completely reevaluate your code and go do something. There probably is, and I just don't know about it because that's not my thing. But I don't think they're that bad. I haven't heard of anything with like gnarly Pulse Secure or Ivanti anytime before this. Like I can't remember one. But
so Shadow Ninja 85 brought up. So is FortiGate actually less secure? Or are they more diligent on internal red teaming? I don't know. There was a lot of vulnerabilities in Fortinet appliances for a while, and I think that one of the problems, especially whenever you're looking at like Fortinet as a company, is they have a tremendous number of different products that are out there. And just like Wizbo just said, this is one product of several. And whenever you have development shops in most organizations, security organizations included, you have this big push to get new technologies out, and they really don't backfill and try to secure those things as well as they possibly should, because you just get this huge product line footprint that becomes incredibly unmanageable. We saw it with FireEye years ago before they got bought up by Mandiant, or I don't know who bought who in that situation, but FireEye underneath the hood was QEMU as a virtualization hypervisor. And we were seeing vulnerabilities showing up in QEMU, and then shortly thereafter, you would see the same types of vulnerabilities that would show up in FireEye. And this is a long time ago, but it once again goes to that technology footprint and how many products they're actually trying to maintain with those things. And, Andrew, kind of want to throw this your way. I think the thing I want to get, I have this vision in my head that anytime these vendors start getting these vulnerabilities, be it Java, be it Flash, be it Fortinet, be it Ivanti, be it whoever, I always have this vision of like cloud providers, like laughing nervously, like, what's his name in The Simpsons? Danger, like, because they just keep rolling this stuff out so quickly.
Yeah, this one is particularly interesting and concerning, I think, because the write-up actually says that they were able to execute arbitrary code via a SAML bypass. That chain of things for me is very, very concerning in so many ways. It's like, what the heck third-party library is that client running that allows a command injection via a SAML flow?
It's like, definitely Java, I'm calling it.
What's going on in there? And also, that's just not a very common set of, like, you see all the time, like certificate verification problems. You see all these other things with SAML where they're just not doing the right things from a protocol perspective. But like, what the heck thing is allowing you to escape an actual SAML flow into a unprivileged user and then get to other arbitrary things on the same system?
But that tells me they didn't purchase any, or they didn't use any like development kits for SAML, right? Like they literally were like, hey, let's just write this thing from scratch. How bad could that be? And
Well,
we've been seeing that for years. Speaking of people that have seen that for years, longer than I have, Jay, you want to talk a little bit about, companies trying to like home grow? Because seriously, if Ivanti could blame a different third-party vendor for their SAML implementation, they would. Like they would absolutely be doing that. They decided that they were going to roll it homegrown. And Jay, I was wondering if you had any stories or any background on companies trying to like roll their own code whenever they really should just be using a library that's available to them.
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's anybody here who's been testing web apps would say that you constantly find vulns when they wrote something that they just should have used that they should use a library for cross-site scripting. It's cross-site scripting and SQL injection used to be a lot more popular, and cross-site scripting still out there, but they used to be a lot more popular before finally most companies started, most developers started using libraries that, took care of output encoding for you and stopped trying to roll their own. But everybody's going to roll their own crypto forever. Everyone's going to roll their own XML parsing. Everyone's going to roll their own JSON parsing. I mean, I do want to say for this specific vuln, like how is it that it got from one context to another? The issue is like this is an XXE in XML, and the hard part, it's one of those wonderful features you could have to your parsing where you can say I'm going to have an external entity definition that's but just instead of putting in this text, I'm just going to make things easy myself and say go pull it out from the internet. And so instead of pulling code up from the internet and running it, in this case, you're saying, go pull this from the internet, and what you should pull, similar to like an image tag, what you should pull is this other link on the same device. So they call it like confused deputy. It's where, as an attacker, you're telling this thing, hey, I'm going to give you some XML, and when you go to parse it, that'll cause you to hit links. If one of those links turns out to be an action, then now I've gotten you to take that action that I'm not allowed to take.
Yep.
I'm actually my hot take on this is that I think part of the problem with these types of devices is that they haven't done a good enough job of putting them in the hands of bug hunters. Bug bounties are great, right? Because I can just publicly search for bugs and find them and get them fixed. This is what all the big tech companies use and rely on, in addition to other security things. But with these paid products, I think it's in the manufacturer's best interest to be able to get licenses to these people, because I genuinely do think part of what happens here is you have an exploit in a device that opens up access to lots of people who previously never had access to this device. So like as a, fake APT that I am, now I have access to Pulse Secure for the first time because I just rooted one of them. I'm going to start looking around. I'm going to start is there persistence mechanisms I can take advantage of? Is there, privilege elevations, or what can I get out of it? This might be my first time or my threat group's first time ever digging into this. And that's going to lead to more and more vulnerabilities. So I think that's part of it is that's another reason we see these follow-on vulnerabilities, because a bunch of people who are good at finding bugs are now getting access to this via illicit means, and they're finding more stuff. In addition to the security researchers are focusing on it, and the company themselves is focusing on it. So I think that's part of it is I don't know what exactly the licensing would look like, but you need to give people access to your stuff so they can find bugs. Because if I have to pay, I don't know how much it costs, I'm assuming thousands of dollars, to access the VPN to look for bugs in it, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to be like, okay, I'll just go look at OpenVPN instead.
So I want to ask a question to everybody, though. One of the things we hear a lot of organizations talk about, specifically in like the C-O levels, is they attend all these talks about supply chain and all this garbage. And they're like, I need a bill of materials. Like whenever you're going through and you're saying, we have a product, what are all the open source licenses? What are all the different libraries that you're using? And many organizations look at that as though it is a problem to have lots of open source software part of your commercial product that you're selling. Is it? Or is it more terrifying when a company's like, no, we rolled that all on our own? By the way, Jay just put in Discord a really cool link with VPN issues. So be sure to check that out with Ivanti's VPN. So be sure to click on that link because you can totally trust links from anyone on this show. I do. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Like an infosec bill of materials, would that have helped this or would that have not? Because I really personally think that they're of limited utility. But yeah, I'd like to hear what you all think of that.
I honestly don't think that that would have helped in this instance.
Yeah.
I think the bill of materials helps a lot more from a standpoint of, are we vulnerable to XYZ vulnerability that has just been announced out there? For instance, a Log4j. How many people didn't know that Log4j was that was going to be part of what they've got sitting there? Oh, we've got this and this, and didn't realize that library, that system was set up inside of there. That's where the SBOM comes in a little bit more into play, I believe, as opposed to we're going to get this, we're not going to get this, because I think almost every company out there is using some open source software in some fashion or some open source library in some fashion.
Okay, cool. And Tire Fire, whose name I absolutely love, I'm going to party with that guy, said SBOM solves a different problem, but it may solve a different problem. I would definitely agree with that. But I think that a lot of executives think that it would have solved this problem, which I agree. I don't think it would have, but anybody else have a take on that too?
Yeah, I don't want to be too outspoken on this issue. This is the one I did my homework on. So I'm kind of, I think SBOM might actually be a little helpful here. I don't think for all of us that are, for all the companies out there that are running Ivanti necessarily, but for anybody doing research, I know that, so there are 5, this is the 5th vulnerability in Ivanti. And for all of these, you kind of have to chain 2 of them together to get anywhere. But this is the 5th one. And in reading about the 5, one of them, there was a kind of a whole brouhaha because it turned out that vulnerability, there was complaints like, hey, you're giving this CVE a new vuln, but actually it's being caused by this component, and that component already has a CVE for this vuln. So I got to think, like maybe when the first vulnerability comes out in the Ivanti VPN or in the Fortinet VPN or whatever, SBOM's not as useful. But once the vulnerabilities come out and the attackers have started to turn the Eye of Sauron over to Ivanti now, or over to a given piece of software, I think if there's an SBOM, it's actually useful. I mean, it's useful for the attackers. It's useful for all the researchers, for all the people, for all of us, whether we're on attack or defense. We're all out here on Twitter or what have you, trying to catch up to where the 0 day, to where the creators of the exploits are already at. And in our catch up, we're learning all this stuff about, that's, and I think that in that catch up, we can actually start to get a little ahead of them if we can look at an SBOM and say, first, it's using these, it's using these libraries. Is there anything that's been found in those libraries already? Are there, heck, let's get ahead of them, find the vulnerabilities before they start getting exploited 0 day and publish. So that's my take. Thanks.
So I also feel.
I've got one more question I want to roll on that, Corey, and then I'm going to kick it over to you. All right. You're now the CISO of Ivanti. What the hell do you do?
You're asking me?
Corey or Jay?
I'm asking you just an open question to everybody.
Good.
You're the CISO of Ivanti. What the hell do you do?
Start networking on LinkedIn.
You have a golden parachute.
Put your head
you're
between
fine.
your legs and kiss your butt goodbye.
Well, so I mean,
hire a better red team.
That's where I was going to go with this. Is like, okay, so this has got to be the worst acquisition in Ivanti history.
Yeah.
The joke I was going to make is like, do you think the executives that signed off on it still got their bonuses, right? But I think this is like a question of due diligence, and we have pen testing customers come to us a lot and say, we're doing M&A, or we're doing, we're going to acquire this product or whatever. We want you to test it and make sure it's not full of holes. So I guess my question is, from Ivanti's perspective, when they bought this product, do you think they did any due diligence testing? Did they know these holes were there and say, oh, these are accepted risks? Or did they just say, no, it's moved under our, product brand and we're not going to touch it anymore?
I can't imagine that there would be any kind of actual paper trail that would say that they were having an RCE as an accepted risk. That would be amazing. That'd be a story in itself.
Just to go back for a minute to John's question about like, does open source make this better or worse? I think the answer is it doesn't necessarily make it better or worse, because I've audited projects where the open source implementation of SAML or OIDC just like doesn't verify a cipher, or if you have this specific implementation of this Python library, it will just fail open. So in many cases on both sides, implementing it on your own or using open source, we don't really have inside-out testing today for identity stuff that's applied consistently that you could use even for a report like that. And that is the part that's lacking.
And Andrew, this is predominantly for Andrew and Jay. Would a code analysis like DAST or STAST tool would have helped deal with these particular vulnerabilities? I've gone through the ones that have been released, and a lot of people are like, how would a company actually deal with this on the ground? So if you would have had the right plugins in your development libraries or your right audit tools to be able to audit the source code of your products, would it have helped with these vulnerabilities?
It's not even a SAST or DAST question. I think at a primitive level, it's even just an outside-in testing issue. Like go back to primitive synthetics test type stuff. Does it work? Does it fail when we expect it to fail? Does it secure when we expect it to secure? And we can throw all the other stuff out the window on like the crypto verification side. Curious to hear what other folks think.
Jay,
yeah, I mean,
you've dug around in these exploits and you've written auditing tools. So what are your thoughts? Do you think, because like I said, I'm trying to look at this from a CISO's perspective. And one of the things I would do as a CISO is like full stop. We're going to go through, we're going to audit all of our code. We're just going to do static analysis starting there. We're going to simultaneously ramp up a bunch of red teams, give them full access to all of our source code and get them live action production access to our servers to do this as fast as they possibly can. But we're going to be doing these two things in parallel. If I was CISO, if you're a CISO and you're listening to this, something like this happens. If you're from Ivanti, hi, I'm a random person on the internet that you should probably listen to or not. Honestly, I don't care. But you should be hiring a red team, a damn good red team. You should be doing a code audit all the way, beginning all the way through the end with them reporting all the way back up to you. But you need to be doing simultaneous red teaming with the red team getting full access to all effing source code right now. Yeah. And your internal shop does it. But I go back to the question for Jay. For these vulnerabilities, you've looked at them. You've got the GitHub repository. Do you think like a static analysis or dynamic analysis tool would have helped with any of these vulnerabilities? Because like you said, many of them, I think Andrew said, you have to chain two of them together to gain access. Do you think it would have helped?
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, I do think it would have. And I think that's the question. The question for Ivanti right now is, like, as we said, like they bought, they bought this tool. They've bought a whole bunch of other things. We have a client right now who actually just hired us on security architecture review to help give advice on a different Ivanti tool that isn't a VPN. And so in my mind, I do exactly that. So first, yes, I think SAST and DAST would help. Can you guarantee that SAST and DAST catches everything? No, but that's why that was a great example of, get a red team, get a red team going immediately, like get a red team in, and also get your SAST and DAST work going. And of course, the hard part, and I'm sure there's someone over there is thinking about this because it's been more than a month of finding these vulnerabilities. And Ivanti sounds stretched a little thin, to be honest, because when I was reading when I was reading up on each of the vulnerabilities as they were found, initially Ivanti said, we're working on patches. Here's some mitigations and workarounds. By the way, expect the patches to take a little bit, but we're going to try to create the patches for the appliance versions that have the greatest number of users first. So it's really taken them a while to create all these patches. They really don't seem to have the resources.
Yeah. Well, I have a transcript here from the Super Bowl ad for Ivanti next year. They're saying the first organization to ever make CISA turn off the entire product.
That's awesome.
Pushing new ground. we're breaking. As far as I know, I've never.
know.
That's unprecedented that I'm aware of. I've never heard of CISA being like, turn it off now.
So I do know, not CISA, this predates CISA, but I know a long time ago there were Cisco networking devices. This would have been 2004 or 5, I think. And there were specific serial numbers we had to go through when I was working in classified realm. We had to go through and find those serial numbers because they believed that they had already been backdoored. And they were like, shut these things down. Even if they're in ops, even if they're in production, they need to be shut down immediately. That wasn't CISA. That was like a DOD.
Was that public though, John?
I can try to hunt it down. CJ might know because he was there at the same time. But that might have been a DISA directive at that point. And I also know that DISA and the NSA, they have the approved low-risk software list, which that's one thing. But they also have high risk, like there's certain software, like you're not going to get Kaspersky in. So there are situations where software does end up on the naughty list and has to get ripped out relatively quickly, or you need some type of plan of action and milestones for transitioning it out of your environment.
Yeah, but this is an emergency directive.
Yep.
I don't think, at least since we've been doing the news, we've never talked about this level.
No, I agree.
The last thing I want to say on this, Riza, we got to highlight his job posting for the CISO at Ivanti. As is tradition on the show, we have job posting for Chief Information Security Officer, able to do minimal due diligence testing, 5+ years of experience in accepting things as they are, and 1 day of experience with code analysis, $500K a year. That's pretty low, plus bonuses, plus like 1.5 in stock and whatever else.
Yeah, this goes back to whoever took that role, especially whenever they bought the companies without doing due diligence on those companies. Like, there wasn't due diligence. Like, due diligence, if you're acquiring a company, you should demand a code audit. You should demand network threat hunting to see if that intellectual property is already being kicked out. But a lot of the companies that we work with that are trying to do mergers and acquisitions due diligence, they're like, but all that seems to take time, and that seems like that's going to cost us money, and we want their product right now. And your company,
we want our stock go up. We need new yacht.
It's
like
Veruca's salt and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and then she gets sucked up into a tube, and you're like, how did this happen? The suspense is killing me. I hope it'll
shut down the Chocolate Factory right now.
Shut down the Chocolate Factory. Well, do we want to pick on another? Does anybody have any final point, or can we pick on another company? And once again, nothing but love for the people that are in the trenches at Ivanti. Nothing but love for the CISO that's probably having to deal with not enough resources and getting blamed for all of this.
If you got laid off from Ivanti and this is why, and you complained about this, please come on the show.
Yeah, we'd love to talk to you.
We will use a voice changer in the Snapchat filter so no one can see you or hear you, but it'll be fine.
All right. What's the next story we want to talk about here, folks? Pick one. Do we want to talk about Verizon's
We can talk about the job board thing if you want.
Okay, go for it.
So essentially, this is kind of I don't know. The way I see it, it's kind of a sea change, or I don't know what you want to call it. It's basically a new sort of information gathering technique, specifically targeting job boards. And this actually crossed my radar in the data breach space. Someone a couple months ago posted a bunch of job boards specifically targeting Israeli job boards. You can imagine why that was, but so this is kind of something I've seen before, but never seen publicly talked about. This news article specifically is talking about basically they're exploiting vulnerabilities, SQL injections, other attacks against job posting websites, and stealing people's resumes and other things, and then posting them in Telegram channels. So and the thing is, like, it kind of, I guess this is an open question for the group. How much PII do you put in your resume? Because I don't put. I mean, some people put their addresses.
Email, that's it.
Yeah,
email, and that's it. That's what I tell everybody. Only email.
The resumes I see, it's emails, it's addresses, it's
addresses.
Phone numbers.
Yeah. I mean, is address PII? I mean, I'm pretty sure you can find my address.
Yes.
Yeah, I would put it in there.
I mean,
but I don't think, like, for me, I looked at this and I looked at it in a completely different way. Like last week, I was doing the Intro to SOC Core Skills, and we were doing this job posting thing. And Jason does this amazing thing where, like, you go to LinkedIn, you find the job you want, you find the skills that job requires and the technologies, and then you try to build your resume to match that as much as you possibly can ethically. I took it a step further in class, and I can't remember the name of the company. Maybe someone that was in my class is on the news. But I basically just did some basic Google hacking where it was like site:nameofcompany.com, and then minus www, minus investors, minus this, minus that. And after about 4 minutes, we had found out that they used F5. We found out that they were a Fortinet shop because we saw the VPNs. We saw all these different things, all the way down to like the login page for their F5 appliance that we were able to find hadn't been updated since 2017. And it was very interesting to me how like we kind of walked through going to job postings on monster.com and things like that, where don't just look at the job posting for security, look at the other tech jobs, stars. There we go. It was stars. And look at these other job postings to learn the technology profile. All of that is straight out of Recon 101, like hacking. Like that's,
yeah, but these are candidates. These are candidates.
Yeah,
so
but the resumes for those candidates will say, I have previously worked at X company with following technology stacks.
I see. So you're saying I download this data, I look for references to my target company and see what they did in their previous job. I mean,
Yes.
I kind of want to do that now. I had never thought of that. Let me go down.
That was my first thought. My other thought was using this to build resumes to then for fake individuals to then build resumes. All right, what does everybody have experience in? What are the best resumes look like, right? When I apply, I want to be clearly better than everybody else. So when they hire me, and now it's like an insider threat type of deal.
The best resumes have mustaches.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, and I think one of the other things to expand on is that it seems like it's not just they stole resumes. They compromised a resume hosting site. So in some instances, they were able to get admin access on some of the compromised sites. So while we had that question of like how much PII do you put on your resume, that might be a small subset, but the PII that you're giving in the job board for, okay, so if somebody does want to contact you, apply, and we have this we're the middleman here, what email does that go to? And that might be information that is, okay, now you have internal phone numbers, you have hiring companies, or you have look, I'm not sharing my email or phone number with anybody looking for to hire me, but hey, it's this website can be a middle negotiator for that.
This is, you're right, it's so much worse than we outlined with the resume. Like some jobs, when you apply, they require you to give an SSN, or they require you to do a credit check. Like, I mean, I will say this article specifically talks about more resources in like Asia Pacific area, but we've personally seen, like looking through data breaches for our customers, almost all of our customers have job posting websites. Like they use third-party providers usually, and they will not enforce MFA for these things. So like,
they don't care.
They don't care. They're just random candidates. But like you sign into as the candidate, and you have access to their previous application. And then, it has all the information they submitted with their application. Like that, it's another level of like, well, job hunting sucks. Well, now it sucks even more.
But
because
this is something we dealt with kind of in a different angle at Black Hills. Like, we have customers all the time that are like, we're going to need a background check investigation for the testers that are going to be doing the assessment, right? And one of the things that we've been kind of doing lately that works is whenever these companies are like, yeah, we're going to need social security number, date of birth, local address for all of your testers that are going to be working this engagement. And CJ started doing this crazy thing because we're like SOC 2 type 2 compliant. And he's like, that's great. Before I send that information to you, I need to make sure that I'm transmitting it secure. How are we going to do that? Number two, I need to know who's handling that data. Number three, I need to make sure that those people have had a background check investigation. And number four, I need to see your policies and procedures for handling that PII for our testers and PHI in some situations in your internal organization. And like, I would say over half the time, the customers are like, no, we're good.
I think like never answer a lawyer without a question, or always answer a lawyer with another question.
Yeah, just keep them going. It's like,
or you just say, I don't remember.
Great. Well, if we're going to be giving you our sensitive information for our testers, I want you to and we do have customers, by the way, that have all of that stuff locked down. They've got great procedures, and we'll happily do that. But we've had some customers that literally customers be like, BHIS is so hard to work with, that they literally are just like, yeah, I can kind of see the hypocrisy of this. Like, we want you to do all of this, but we're not doing any of those things to protect this data. So it's getting better, but It's just so many organizations just do not care about like the people that they're interviewing and the information that they give.
I mean, just imagine, God forbid, that this recruit includes recruiter notes on the initial screenings, because we outsource a lot of these initial screenings. I don't mean we as in like the company I work for or anything, but as an industry, a lot of us outsource initial screening, and recruiters do put in notes on why candidates do pass, fail, etc. If that is part of the data set, that is insane to have also leaked.
Yeah. It's there's so first there's now more privacy stuff that's going to get out if somebody told a recruiter something that they wouldn't have put in writing, and also the company using those screening recruiters that have the recruiter notes. Man, the liability for anybody they didn't hire just went up. Heck, maybe the liability for the people they did hire. John, I love your approach there. I love the you want to background check us? We're going to need to background check you too.
Gabe, we were talking, we talked briefly, you, me, and Mike, talking about CREST certification and all these certifications in the industry. And there's a ton of them. Like I said, SOC 2 Type 2. Like I think Ranier just said, just to ensure your SOC 2 Type 2 report includes hiring practice background checks, which means that all of your SOC 2 Type 2 report without exceptions is effectively third-party validation of all staff passed background check and all of that. So this gets into this weird thing where you want us to have this level of security as a company. And I agree. I think that we should have that, right? We needed that. But it's got to be fair, right? You can't ask me to be SOC 2 Type 2 as a pen testing firm and then have me immediately violate my SOC 2 Type 2 for third party. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And I would say, like I said, 98% of the time, the customers totally get that. They're like, legit questions, good points. Yeah. And then I love it when they come to us and like, do you have any policies, templates that we can use on this? It's like, oh God. And we totally do. We totally will share it with them.
Is SOC 2 Type 2 genetic?
It sounds like it, right? It sounds like some type of disease, which it totally is. It's basically the accounting industry imposing security standards on the industry, and it got picked up. And I do want to create, Kelly, I'm talking to you. I do want to create a security policy framework for accounting firms. Since they were so nice to us with SOC 2 Type 2, we should do the same to them and say, these are the security requirements for accounting firms everywhere.
I like it, John.
I do wonder, and this is a question maybe for the folks that are more on the compliance and legal side, is there a governance framework beyond just like CCPA and GDPR that governs the deletion or automatic expiry of data inside of these candidate systems?
Holy hell.
Yes.
Kelly?
There are a ton of governance frameworks that a lot of people just don't talk about. There's specific data governance frameworks. There's governance frameworks for IT. There's governance frameworks for security. There's governance frameworks for organizations as a whole. But they've become very industry specific, or they're siloed. There's an organization called ARMA that does a lot with records retention, and they've got their own data governance framework. But the American Association of CPAs, they've also come out with a data protection framework. So honestly, Andrew, you probably don't want to answer that question.
But like legally as a candidate, like if I'm job shopping, let's say hypothetically, and I apply through one of these clearinghouses for jobs, how long can I expect that my information lives in that system if I do nothing?
Until they get their payout.
I just got hit up by CrowdStrike. I got hit up by CrowdStrike, and I applied like 7 years ago.
I don't.
Oh, really? They had that information still?
I'm sorry. Are you saying you applied for a job 7 years ago and they just called you back?
Well, it was because he saw the Super Bowl ad and they knew.
And the job was like bottom level job too, which was also kind of like funny.
That is so terrifying. The concept of like this company just kept your resume on file for 7 years and someone actually read it. Like what? That had to be a glitch. Let's just say it was a fish and move on. Let's talk about Linux. Let's talk about Linux. Linux is secure. It's open source. Nothing's bad. Everything's fine.
I got to find this article. Is this the
one?
Okay.
This is my take on this. So basically, for those, the people that don't know what we're talking about, there's a Shim vulnerability that impacts almost all Linuxes. And the best part is this is Linux's Microsoft moment. And the best part is that it was revealed or disclosed by Microsoft security researchers.
Yeah.
So, and why I say it's their Microsoft moment is because essentially it's like a feature that no one asked for, which is adding HTTP into the bootloader. Does anyone know why this is a thing? Like, why?
It has to be in the bootloader because the bootloader has to be able to grab pre-seed files for various things and then pass those on to second stage. So any automation that's ever worked in ever has to be able to have HTTP as a protocol inside of stage 1.
Okay, fine. Maybe it's not so Microsoft because it is a feature that sounds somewhat legitimate and that people would use, but
it's been an old grub too forever and ever and in Lilo.
Yeah. So there are patches out for this. So TLDR, patch your Linux stuff. The exploit conditions are pretty specific. Is that right? Like you need either min in the middle or local access to write EFI. Is that correct?
I have no idea. I haven't read this one at all. Anyone else?
I was mainly asking Andrew because it sounded like he read it.
Yeah, it sounds like he knows.
I love that White Cyberduck says Andrew is so smart, but I'm actually not smart. I've just written lots of automations that build Linux systems for training classes I make, and that is the entirety of my understanding here.
Well, congratulations. That makes you an expert.
Yeah, if you're not smart, I'm screwed. So
I do want to call out, like, this is being addressed directly by the big vendors, Debian, Red Hat, SUSE, and Ubuntu. Like, yeah, it's going to be picked up and fixed very, very quickly. I love the CVS score. It was a 9.8, which is...
John, did you just say it's going to be fixed very quickly?
I think it will,
sorry.
at least by the vendors that are out there. But then you get into the embedded.
But hold on, because I'm still on Ubuntu 12.04, dude.
Oh dear God!
No, I mean I'm just kidding. But what? I'm just kidding. But seriously, like that. Okay, so this, I don't know. I guess this is a question for the group, but is it just me, or is patching Linux in, like, because Linux is typically used as like workhorses, right? They're like, these are like the compute servers. So from my perspective, there's one of two extremes. One, your Linux is deployed and then burned down and then deployed and then burned down like 5 times a day. Or it's the same box that hasn't been touched since like 1993.
Yes.
And if you touch it, everyone, the guy retired that used to maintain it, so you can't touch it. I don't know.
So what I want to know is, in a stage 1 exploit, if you're retrieving something via HTTP, how do you initialize networking? Because like generally in stage 1, you don't have IP stuff yet.
I think it's like, I mean,
stage 1 of a bootloader is usually really tiny.
Yeah,
it's a shim.
It's teeny weeny.
Tiny shim.
So are they actually putting a patch in there that's initializing a full network stack and getting an IP address?
It looks to me like HTTP boot. It looks to me like HTTP boot is in that stage 1 though.
So I used to manage a bunch of Linux machines that run a cluster, and we use TFTP to boot the system. So it reads kind of like that, right? That all the nodes. So if you're booting off of HTTP, then the attacker would have to man in the middle of that traffic to theoretically send the payloads in. And so it seems like that, even though it has a high score, it seems like that the use cases for this are kind of, I wouldn't say limited, but it's not like it's remote code over the internet and you break in, right?
Correct. So it's local or MITM.
Yeah. So here's Eclipsium. Here's what Eclipsium went through. And by the way, shout out to Eclipsium and Paul Zadorian, who's at Eclipsium. In a hypothetical attack scenario, the threat actor on the same network could leverage the flaw to load a vulnerable shim bootloader, or by local advisory with adequate privileges, manipulate the data on the EFI partition, which if you're manipulating data on the EFI partition, you're effed anyway. You're done. An attacker could perform man-in-the-middle attack and intercept the HTTP traffic between the victim and the HTTP server used to serve the files to support HTTP boot. The attacker could be located on any network segment between the victim and the legitimate server, but I'm willing to bet the more useful scenario would be layer 2. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to, this is not something that's remotely exploitable yet. You definitely have to be on the exact same network, layer 2, or somewhere in between the HTTP boot server. This is neat, but I'm not going to freak out over it. Like, I'm going through this once again. If the attacker is sitting on that local network with you, right? If they're on the same network, something catastrophically bad has happened. Now, I'm not saying don't panic. I'm saying let's be very calm. Let's be very collected. Let's get our stuff patched. We're going to do that. But I don't think we should look at this and be like, oh my God, Linux is complete garbage. They have this critical vulnerability and we shouldn't be running Linux, because we can go over link local multicast name resolution, NetBIOS name services, MDNS. There's tons of things that you can do at layer 2, Yersnia, Loki style attacks, just tons of tools out there. This is just going to be another type of attack vector once you're on that network segment for Linux systems that reboot. Or hell, if you get access to a Linux system with root level privileges to write to the EFI partition, I guess the world's your oyster.
You don't PXE boot on the internet, John?
No, I try not to.
Oh.
I tried to give that up a while
Stopped that
ago.
last week.
So, okay, and there's a little bit of confusion. I don't know if anyone knows. We might just be making things up, but PXE doesn't use HTTP, does it?
No. This sounds like
I think it uses TFTP, doesn't it?
It's in the same category.
PXE uses TFTP, but I think this in particular is a good rubber ducky or flipper zero kind of attack. If you can trick something into rebooting, and then you can control the arguments to the bootloader. And a lot of people, believe it or not, to this day, still don't protect their bootloaders.
Not encrypted, right? You do full disk encryption, but the bootloader is unprotected.
Yeah, so you can still pass it. But I mean, if you're doing full disk encryption on the boot volume, all you've done is you've given over potential control of that endpoint to an attacker.
All right, but that Pixie boot attack, if network boot is enabled on devices, you can run that Pixie boot attack, and you can basically push your own image via TFTP and push Kali instances to those systems, gain access to the hard drive. This has been an attack methodology that's been out there for a long time. It's very rarely, if ever, used. Like, I know of 0 actual attacks in the wild that were using it. And I could be wrong. I mean, I don't see the millions of attacks that are out there on the internet. But even pen testing, how often do we take advantage of Pixie boot? And there's some very good reasons why we don't.
Yeah, that goes in the list of the webcast we were going to do of things we're not allowed to do during a pen
don't
test.
do this.
Most definitely.
So, okay, what you're saying, John, is that it's not the year of the Linux desktop, because it seems like the main way to exploit this would be it would be if you were actually running this, like Andrew said, on a client device. If your laptop got stolen, and this, if you're running Linux on your laptop or whatever, and it got stolen, and so someone now can fully compromise the system. So that's the scary part of it.
But they can't. If it's actually encrypted, hard drive encryption, you can still Pixie boot, but you're not going to get access to that encrypted hard drive. And once again, I think one of the main reasons why we don't do this, and this is kind of what you were getting at too, Corey, is we don't do this because there's a very strong possibility that you will smoke a network device or something on that same network in a way that you don't want to bring that down. It's kind of like a type of attack that has uncontrolled consequences. It's like with Responder, whenever you fire up Responder, WPAD is off by default for web proxy auto detection attacks. Not because it's a crappy attack or it doesn't work. It's off by default because it's so effing effective that it'll bring entire enterprises to their knees. So it's off by default for very good reason. So this type of attack, well, I agree, it's absolutely, we got to patch it. We've got to fix it. Agreed, 110%. But you shouldn't be up until 2:00 in the morning trying to patch your crap tonight. Like,
John, if
honestly.
I can write a malicious bootkit, I can get your full disk encryption password, 100%.
Yes.
Like, just keep that in mind, because if I can deploy a bootkit to your system,
type of encryption that you're using and how that key is implemented on the data on the
hard drive. I'll just deploy a bootkit that harvests your key. That's my thing.
Full disk encryption aside, I think about this much more as like a kiosk attack. Like if I walk up to a cool display on like the promenade in Las Vegas and it happens to be running Linux and it happens to have a USB port I could gain access to plug in a rubber ducky or something, I could take over that kiosk relatively effectively with a totally controlled by me image of something through stage one. And
but as long as we're in Vegas, as long as we're in Vegas looking at these kiosks, I hope you'll give me odds here, but I think 8 times out of 10, it's not going to be set up with secure boot in the first place.
Probably.
You
could just
probably won't even have the encrypted hard drive.
Disk.
Well, sure. We could all acknowledge that if it's a kiosk, it's probably not even UEFI. But you know,
Probably not.
Yeah, I mean,
and
I think
if it's an airport, it's windows. You know, there's a bunch of different scenarios for this. But
The shooters just said, "Does this kiosk look like a giant cloak?"
Can't wait for that thing to lose
It's a
on the
kiosk.
news, right?
Yeah,
That
no,
was
I
awesome.
think
I
I
want to
do
see
think
what
if
happens to DEF CON and Black Hat this year. Like, if I was running that globe, I would, I don't think it's going to get compromised, but I can totally.
Oh, it
see
was
that
up last year,
globe-
and the joke, yeah, it was there last
do like
year,
the
and the
blue
joke,
screen of death.
yeah, everyone kept joking that it's not working because hackers, but like as far as I know, that was all just rumor. I don't think that.
Holy
was
hell! Do we want to talk about the Flipper Zero since we're talking about this stuff? in
Yeah, we
Canada?
should talk about it. Yeah.
Wait,
Oh,
I
you're
thought,
Canadian.
I thought Silent
Order your
Night threw
flipper.
a great link in for defeating BitLocker encryption, or for that matter, probably Linux encryption, full disk encryption, where the decryption keys on the TPM. Yeah, can we pop the link up?
There we go. This is the link for Flipper Zero Man.
Okay.
Oh, Jay, we kind of pivoted to the Flipper Zero
Pivoted.
thing.
Okay. Yeah, I
but
missed
we
that.
can come back to
I'll
that.
be the slow.
So yeah, so basically for those for the Canadians that aren't in the room, Canada's banning is banning. I think did ban. Like I think it's done as far as I know. Like it is banned. Supposedly because of car theft. I guess car theft is really bad, and there's some issues with the penal code in Canada where car theft isn't really seen as a very severe crime, so people are able to just do it again and again without any kind of repercussions. But I guess, is this the way to address it? It doesn't feel like it is, but
It absolutely is. I think this is the right way to do it, Sarcasm.
I mean, banning things.
I love the
usually works
quote.
out, right?
Today, I announce that we are banning the importation sale of consumer hacking devices like Flipper used to commit these crimes. It's like, so there goes Raspberry Pis. There goes everything from Hack 5.
No
there goes
Ponegashis.
notebook
Keyboards.
computer. We should stop.
wait, you can steal a car with a Ponagachi? Does it like get a really big smile on its
I
face?
do love
when
how
it
A
does
they
it?
USB drive. You can steal a car with a USB drive. We're good.
You can steal a car with a
There goes-
screwdriver. Are they going to ban that? Are they going to
There
ban
goes
what
the
if,
Steam Deck.
Hack RF1.
Steve
Hack
Deck.
RF1 has got to be. You've got to Edis boards. You've got to ban Edis. You got to ban Hack RF. You got to.
Okay, but okay, I have a
ban
question.
Michael
all of them.
Osmond's
real.
going to be crying.
Okay,
Yeah,
devil's
yeah.
advocate. Devil's advocate. Okay, here's a question I have. Are the people using flippers to steal cars smart enough to build their own with a Raspberry Pi? Like, is it that? Is it
No,
is it
but-
like
but I
is this
think
the
that-
Oh, you
equivalent
can
of like,
find anything on
No,
eBay.
I think the people that are stealing cars are smart enough to work with a group that can replicate that functionality that a Flipper Zero has. Like, you ban the Flipper Zero, somebody's going to develop
it's the
another
Flipper
device
One.
that's called
The Flipper
totally
One?
not a Flipper Zero,
Yeah.
and and then they're going to go. It's just, Canadian, not Canadian, the German cyber crime law. I think it's like 302 or 202C. That was basically, banning the import, creation, yielding, or distribution of tools used in cyber crimes, right? That was the law, and then it got pushed all the way up to the German Federal Constitutional High Court, and they basically said, well, it's tools created with malicious intent. It's like, what the hell?
Is this
Like,
Medine's doll?
what?
Is this Tim Medine's doll example?
I don't know. Maybe does he have a doll that's got a Flipper Zero shoved up its ass or something? I don't know.
No, he
Oh, didn't he get talk with the guy all the time?
Which, by the way, we need to get that on the
John,
Spearfish
that's called a
Middle School.
puppet. That's called a puppet.
Yeah.
No, so a couple of years ago, Tim Medine had an animated doll, and the doll was banned in Germany under that same law you're talking about. So one of Tim's favorite tricks is he would put the doll in the middle of a hallway at a big conference center, and he would make the doll talk and say really scary, naughty things, and he was
This is the
nowhere to
one
be
that, like,
seen.
you'd walk by it, and it would normally say, like, I like you, give me a
Ice
hug.
cream.
Instead, it would say, teach your children to worship Satan. Like,
Yes.
Recall
different
this
MP3
now.
audio files. I remember this. I thought Josh Wright was involved in this too.
Yeah, it sounds like
He could have
Josh
been.
Wright.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was trying to. I have an ESP32. A couple people mentioned the ESP32s.
I've got one of those in a
the
box next door.
comments.
Those are awesome.
Yeah.
Are you
so the
based in
ESP30
Canada? Because if so, you're committing a crime right now. I'm just kidding.
I'm not in. I'm not in
That is
Canada.
totally
I will
an
say.
inconspicuous watch, Jay. Like,
I
you
go.
walk
I know
around
it's
and
very
like,
inconspicuous.
who's the hacker
watch.
here?
Yeah. So, but I go to CanSec West every year, and This last year, I had to decide whether to leave my flipper behind, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go through customs with the flipper zero, because law enforcement keeps making all kinds of noises about deciding that flipper zero is the equivalent of lockpicks.
Now, that's an interesting thing, because aren't there some states, I'm not 100% certain, but aren't there some states that have laws that if you have lockpicks, you have to have some type of certification or something to justify you having
You have to have a
lockpicks?
license in Virginia to carry lockpicks, as an example.
And one of the fun things is that you have to be, at least in Wisconsin, you have to be like recognized as a locksmith, but there is no statewide governing body for being a
Recognition of
locksmith. And it's just, in some cases, it can be like, I just have a card that says I'm a locksmith, and they're like,
Dude.
good enough.
It's like the
Years
Ron
and years
Swanson
ago.
authorization note. I can do what I want.
Years and years ago, I was going to, I think it was DerbyCon 2, I was flying out to, and I was in JFK in New York City. And I had a full lockpick set and a crystal and Southard lock, and I had all this stuff because, I was trying to learn lockpicking. And it was something I could do on the airplane that wasn't just like watching TV. So I go through I go through the TSA, and someone's like, excuse me, you have a bunch of lockpicks. And I'm like, they're all under the size. They aren't an edged device. They are legal. And he said, do you have any type of license that proves that you need this for your job? I still had my CISSP business card. Like back in the day, ISE Squared would give you this little like credit card sized thing that was your CISSP certification with your name and your certification number on it. And I kept that in my wallet. I totally pulled that out, handed it to him, and I said, hey, I'm a certified information system security professional. And he was like, you're good to go. Thank you very much, sir. And that was it. That was a good enough certification for him at that time. So
we actually had this happen at Deadwood. Right after Deadwood, I was flying through the airport with Jeff McJunkin, and he had the bag with 40 pounds of locks and picks in them because he was going to Germany. And TSA opened the bag, and they said, why do you need this many locks and lock picks? And he just said, because I'm a teacher. And they just looked at him and they were like, okay, good enough for us.
That was it.
I was just going to mention Jeff because he sent, I remember on one of his flights, he sent a picture of sitting at his seat on the plane with a big pile of master locks, just tons of them in a set of lockpicks. He's like, this is what I'm doing on the plane
I'm going to tell you, if you just heard Jay say that, don't be like Jeff McJunkin. It's cool that Jeff does that, right? But if you think you'll get away with it, you won't. Because if somebody comes up to Jeff McJunkin and they're like, excuse me, sir, Jeff will just look at them and immediately they melt. They're like, there's no way this guy is a bad person. He's one of the nicest people you will ever meet in your entire life. And Jeff McJunkin has Jeff McJunkin magical powers you do not have. I know this because I've had pilots literally confiscate my locks mid-flight and hand them back to me when I got off the airplane. So
we call it JME nowadays. JME. Jeff McJunkin Energy.
No. Jeff McJunkin. There we go. JME. We need a shirt. I've got Jeff McJunkin Energy.
Okay, back to the flipper thing. I mean, where is this going to go? Like, is it going to get struck down? Is there going to be like a Second Amendment, like whatever the National Flipper Association is going to start lobbying the Canadian government? Like, is this going to get a lot of kickback, or are Canadians just going to be like, this is fine, everything's fine? Like, what is going to be is there a lot of backlash? I don't use social media.
I've seen some clever ridicule of this with it's like, okay, so you can attach a module to it to do something, and somebody literally attached a module that had a bike key on it, and they go, oh, look, everybody, you can now use a Flipper Zero to steal a bike. And
they just taped it on or something?
Yeah, they just taped it on. It's like, look at this module that allows it to do something. And I think they were making that argument that, like, adding on non-standard features to the Flipper Zero, because it's like, even with the Apple BLE spam, that was something that you needed that custom firmware and that dev mode to do in order to be able to broadcast on those frequencies. The same for like the car replay attacks. You need it's locked by default on the Flipper Zero. You need to unlock that. You need to do some additional modifications. So I think there was that argument of, it's like, what amount of modifications now puts the onus on?
But
Alex, the device is bad.
it goes right back to you can use GNU radio, you can use
exactly.
Hack RF1, you can use an Edis board.
Yeah, they're going to ban the radio waves and the replay of radio waves. That's what they're going to do.
That's what they're going to do. That's where we're headed.
But they have
and
rolling codes.
This goes back
already.
to this is a whole nother conversation, probably a webcast. Like, you know, I really give props to Europe and Crest, like creating like their own pen testing certification. That's great. We do need some type of pen testing like group that can lobby against this type of stupidity.
The EFF, but Canadian.
Yeah, maybe we need to do another road trip, y'all. Like we went to Adele. We did it with Security Awareness Con. I can't remember what the hell we called it.
Yep.
But we went to.
We should go into Ontario and honk our horns.
I think we need to go right to Canada, and we need to like talk about what the flipper is, how security professionals use the flipper, and really try to do an awareness thing, and not trying to be like assholes about it, but honestly doing it from an awareness and education perspective.
Yeah, if you're Canadian,
how this actually works.
Hit us up.
Talking about the news goes to Canada. I love it.
Yeah, hit us up.
I'm going to talk to Zelda. Let's make it happen, folks. Let's do it.
What are the odds?
First, what's that? March 15, Vancouver.
If only I knew somebody who knew somebody at Consec West that could get us an evening thing.
What are the odds that they would jail a bunch of Americans and detain us with Flipper Zeros?
Pretty high.
I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about like coming back into the States to where they're like, so you tell us about this talk that you gave on flippers, and we're just permanently Canadian. We're just permanently Canadian citizens. Then that they just go, the U.S. doesn't let us back in.
Head over to Windsor, pop on in, pop back out.
Yeah, we have friends that have
Wait,
broken
what? I
into
thought he lived in
the United
Wisconsin.
States. Yeah,
Well, Wisconsin's close enough.
All right, we're gonna
Instead
this
of bringing
program.
Flipper Zeros, though.
Thank
we
you all
basically
for coming. We're spiraling into like trying to figure out how to get into Canada with a bunch of Flipper Zeros. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you all next week.